From Oscar Steakhouse, inside the Plaza Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas, you're on the corner of Main Street. Welcome to the only podcast produced by and recorded in a Las Vegas hotel casino. From gaming to dining to entertainment to sports to Vegas history, this is the place to be for the inside scoop, because this is the place to be downtown. Now, here's Plaza CEO Jonathan Jossel.
Oscar's Martini is on the way.
Can't start talking without a martini, right?
There it is. Okay, well, welcome to Oscar's Dinner Series, everybody. Welcome to downtown Las Vegas. Welcome to the former mayor of Las Vegas, Oscar Goodman. And welcome to the greatest former mayor of Las Vegas, Carolyn Goodman. So Oscar, as always, let me see if I step further away. Okay, Oscar, as always, has some great stories in store for you all tonight. Whose first Oscar's Dinner Series is this? By show of hands. Wow. Okay, we got a lot of first-timers here tonight. That's great. If you want to hear all the other stories, they're all available on the Corner of Main Street podcast. You can hear all of Oscar's Dinner Series previously. For those of you whose first ones it is, please keep your chatter to a minimum during Oscar's speech. He does not appreciate talking while he's talking. It hasn't ended well historically, so enjoy the stories. They are great. Okay, so on your table, you have a magazine, a little comedies book from Oscar, and you have a menu which has a picture of Oscar on the back. If you want, he will sign them for you or take pictures of them, take pictures of you with them at the end of the night. And before I turn over to Oscar, I want to wish a very happy birthday to Charles Johnson. Happy birthday, Charles. Many, many more. Thank you to Telson Tequila. Where's Telson? The greatest tequila in all of Las Vegas over there. Thank you to Telson for being here tonight. And without any other, one other thing, sorry, Nick. At the end of the talk, we have a Q&A, and you can ask Oscar any questions you want to ask him at the end. So be thinking about whatever questions you want to ask him. And with that, thank you all for being here tonight at the Oscars Dinner Series. Here is Oscar Goodman.
Thank you. Thank you, Johnny. Thank you. And everybody knows what happens if you're caught talking while I'm talking. We'll all say it at the same time. What happens to you? You get... Oh, my God, you are the dumbest audience. I mean, most of you have been here. You know what happens if you talk when I talk. You get whacked. This is not and it usually comes from over there, to be quite frank with you. And I have very little tolerance tonight because I'm going to try something a little different. I've got about 75 different stories. No, I have a lot of different stories I'm going to tell because they're quick, they're to the point. I think it's part of what the title of my... Whose phone was that? No, was that your phone? Where? Sorry. No, there's no sorries. No, cut that guy's thumb off, will you? Oh, man, this is a horrible group already. But it's funny, you know, I had a big speech all written out, and one of my dear friends is here tonight, and she used to know how I would prepare for a speech, and that's Betsy Fretwell. Betsy was my city manager. And Betsy was phenomenal. Betsy drank more than any city manager I've ever met. Wherever we went, I knew I would find Betsy. We found her drinking mojitos in Atlantic City, Mai Tais in New Orleans. It was never a problem. She never went to one meeting. She put everything on the city tab, and it caused a federal investigation to take place. But being a Republican, she knew she had nothing to worry about. Oh, did I say something? Eric's here. Everyone knows my son Eric. He's the judge, and Eric's a great judge. And my son Ross is, where's Ross? My son Ross is here. He's a great lawyer. And My beautiful daughter Kara's under the weather tonight, so she wasn't able to make it. But my other son, who's a wonderful, if you can be a wonderful oncologist, he wanted to come, but we told him that, he puts a damper on things because of the nature of his profession. I said, I don't want anybody who's suffering from a problem that he has to treat here tonight and have to see him have their night ruined. But what happened last night, I had my speech all prepared, and Betsy knows I write them on little notes, and then my mind is such, it all goes into my brain because I do have, and I'm not bragging, but it's the truth, I have the greatest brain in the history of the world. I have brain cells, don't laugh, I have brain cells that have grown exponentially to the amount that I drink. And I drink my Bombay Sapphire. I am the spokesman for Bombay Sapphire, and drink at least a bottle a night. I don't know why people think that's funny every time I say it. It's the truth. I don't lie. There's only one little white lie that I'll be telling tonight, and I'll let you know when I tell it because it sounds like it's the truth. And all the rest are true stories, and it's amazing. I can't sleep the night before, having spent 2 weeks actually working very diligently on trying to convey a message that talks about old Las Vegas, talks about the mob. I haven't got into the mayor's job yet, either the best mayor, who is my trophy wife, or the second best mayor, who is me. And after that, to be quite frank with you, I don't count mayors. And mayors don't count. As far as I'm concerned, I think that we've had the best run 25 years. And Jonathan points out that Carolyn and myself, it's the first time that Goodman was not mayor at the time that we had the dinner series. Johnny, how many years have we been doing this? 12 years. It seems like a lifetime. It gets boring after a while, but we get a good crowd, and I'm from Philadelphia originally, and Carolyn and myself came out in 1964. Anybody else from Philadelphia except Joel Slomsky? Joel is a federal. What are you doing? Milking a cow there? Look, Joel Slomsky. This is the most amazing thing in the world. He is a United States federal district judge from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, and he used to be with the strike forces trying to put me in prison, and now he's not even comped out here because I said, if a guy by the name of Slomsky comes into town, you don't have to hurt him, but certainly don't comp him. And Joel, I'm glad you brought your friends. Are these the same friends that I saw last time? Yes? No? Is that my friend from last time? I don't care about Brooklyn. Brooklyn has the same kind of bridge, I think, that San Francisco has, and I don't like San Francisco either. There's nothing to like about it. But last time Joel came out, he brought the winner of the Megabucks. How much did that gentleman and his wife win? $258 million, and he's trying to buy the Plaza Hotel, and Polio refuses to sell it to him because he doesn't want Jonathan to go someplace else and compete with him because Jonathan has done a phenomenal job. But my first story involves a project that, as I say, I had everything all written out, always figured out until I saw my Eagles play this weekend, and in every Eagles game, they always have a shot going down Broad Street into the downtown, and you see two buildings. You see the City Hall with William Penn on top, and then there was a time you saw nothing next to it, but there was a fellow by the name of Willard Rouse, who had the Rouse Company, that wanted to build a building called One Liberty Place right next door to City Hall. Well, back there they have what is called legislation. There's like an ordinance here in order to build something taller than William Penn's hat. which is appropriately on his head, and was the tallest object in the city of Philadelphia. You had to have legislation passed, and the only person who could sponsor the legislation was the councilman from that particular district where City Hall was located. And the councilman that they had was a fellow by the name of Lee Beloff. And Lee was from South Philly. I'm from West Philly. And Lee associated, as everybody did who lived in Philadelphia, with people who were of ill repute. And one of the persons was Little Nicky Scarfo, who was in charge of the Philadelphia murder outfit, and knew all of Scarfo's henchmen. And when you looked at the henchmen, they had names like Sal and Guido and names like that, right out of Goodfellas. And one of the henchmen, a guy by the name of Nicky the Crow Caramondi, had overheard that Rouse wanted to get legislation to build one Liberty Place taller than William Penn's hat. And he went to Beloff's assistant, a fellow by the name of Rigo, and he said, we can make some money here. Figuring that Rigo would do the appropriate thing on behalf of the Scarfo crime family, and told Nicky Scarfo, they called him Little Nicky, but a different Little than the aunt, who I represented so many years out here, who was Anthony Spilaccio. Little Nicky, it didn't like to be insulted. Little Nicky, I think ultimately suffered a penalty for killing somebody who said they did not like his concrete company. It wasn't the best concrete company in Atlantic City or Margate, New Jersey, and the person who said that was on Nicky's hit list. And then when that person broke his engagement with one of Nicky's associates, then that person had a lot of problems, because that's when the murder contract went out. And you didn't have to do much to get on Nicky's list. If you looked the wrong way, you were on the list. But the only good thing, the mobsters were very bad shots. And they really didn't know how to kill anybody. And Nicky wasn't in the habit of teaching people how to kill people. We had a sort of you take your oath, you become part of, and you're a made man, and you get an assignment, and then you kill them. And the best form of killing somebody in Philadelphia, it was similar to the best form from Chicago, which was 22 behind a year, and not as complex as the best form in Kansas City, and the outfit there, where it was a bomb usually. So there are different aspects to the various families around the country as to how they do away with people who get in their way. And Bobby Simone, who was a very good lawyer from Philadelphia, who ended up unfortunately going to Nellis Air Force Base, and not for an airplane ride, but to the prison camp there, because one of the Scarfo people made a deal where he would have to tell the government that Bobby did bad things, and terrible. I mean, the same person went to the government, and when I got involved with representing these people back there, the first thing they did after somebody went to prison, they wanted to know how much they paid Oscar Goodman, because they wanted to go after him for tax evasion, for tax evasion. And Eric, as a judge, can you evade something if you don't pay it? Well, I don't know whether you have to pay it and then you're charged with evasion for not paying enough, or where you could forget it all, you pay it. But they went after Philip Leonetti, crazy Phil Leonetti, and went to him after he flipped as well, along with Nicky the Crow, and testified against everybody in the Philadelphia mob. And we went through trial after trial after trial. But Bobby knew that I had become a member of the Pennsylvania bar, having never taken the bar practice there. But in order to get your license, you have to go through a a preceptorship, was to clerk for a lawyer for some 6 months. And as soon as I took the bar, Carolyn and I hopped in our car and we drove out here. So I never practiced back there, but I got a phone call one day from Bobby. He says, I have to see you because there's a allegation that I'm a co-conspirator on this a coercion attempt, a bribery attempt of Willard Rouse involving making this one Liberty place taller than William Penn's hat. So I said, well, we'd like Bobby, because Bobby was a friend over the years and even played quarterback, believe it or not, for Temple. They had the worst football team maybe in the history of the world, but Bobby was well loved by certain people in the community. And I said, what would you like me to do? He says, I want you to meet Lee Beloff. I said, you mean Manny Beloff's son? Manny Beloff was a very prominent judge there, unlike Judge Slomski, because Judge Slomski has never done anything wrong in his life, and Manny Beloff never did anything right in his life. But I said, I'd be happy to come back, and Bobby said, well, let's meet at Bookbinders. Has anybody who's been to Philadelphia gone to Bookbinders? Well, behind a great seafood restaurant, right? Well, I love the bluefish there because it's a greasy bluefish, and it was very, very tasty. And I said, well, why don't we go over to Bookbinders? And Lee Beloff was there, and he is introduced to me by Bobby, and everything was going along smoothly. And then all of a sudden, he began shaking. Beloff began shaking and trembling, and he went to the butter knife on the table and ran across the room, and there were 3 guys there who looked a little bit like, well, there are no legitimate looking people here. Is anybody here with a jacket and a tie? No, you're all a bunch of bumps. Who? Oh, the birthday boy? No, wrong kind of white shirt. They had white shirts, dark ties, and they were sitting there eating at Bookbinders. And Beloff stands up, and he runs over to him, and he starts screaming, FBI, FBI, I'm going to kill you. And the guys at the table said, no, IBM. This is a stupid. Eric, what are we going to do with this group?
Whack 'em.
What? Whack 'em? I think we should start anew. So that was one little story, and those are the kind of little stories that I'm going to tell you. And then the same group, they were indicted and brought to trial for the killing of Salvi Testa. Salvi and Judge Slomski remembers a chicken, what was his name, Chicken Head? What was it? Are you suffering from owls? Will you speak up, Your Honor? Oh, go away. It wasn't Narducci. It was, Testa. Chicken Man Testas, who was the underboss for Scarfo until he got in trouble with Scarfo, and he had a son called Salvi. Salvi was a good-looking guy, but he said all the wrong things, did all the wrong things, and they made up their mind that Salvi had to be punished for this. He wasn't getting consent to do certain things that the mob insisted on, and in order to kill somebody with the mob, you have to have permission to do it from the boss, and he would just be out there on his own. So this group was a very active group. They tried, believe it or not, 14 times to kill Salvi. They tried. Yeah, it's amazing. They missed 14 times. They missed on a tennis court. They missed him at somebody's home. They missed him in a funeral parlor. They missed him walking down the street. They missed him in a schoolyard. They missed this guy wherever they went, until finally he went he repeated the step. He went back to a candy shop a second time, and they were waiting for him there, and they got him, and they hogtied him, and then they killed him, and threw him out into the, well, I don't have a desert there like we have, but into the brush, and they were smart enough to do it by putting him in New Jersey rather than in Pennsylvania. But the crow, who was a shrewd bird, the crow gave everybody up, and they indicted this whole Scarfo group and charged them with a murder, and then that murder grew into 13 or 14 different murders, and Leonetti hired me to represent him on the murder case. And they call it a commonwealth back there. It's not a state. It's the Commonwealth. See how much you're learning tonight? It was the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think there's a Commonwealth of Virginia. I think a Commonwealth of Kentucky. I think that's it, as well as Joe, you would know. The Commonwealth of Massachusetts and the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. You could always count on Joe telling you about Commonwealths. He's my Commonwealth man. And they brought them all to trial, and the person who was prosecuting the case was a woman by the name of Christie, Barbara Christie. And she looked, I guess you can't be a girl, and see, here I go, with this neutered stuff, and I can't tell what you're supposed to say anymore. I like to describe her as a Bantam rooster, but there'll probably be some people in the room who'll take issue with that description. But she, pardon me? Oh, yeah, I forgot about the Shannon Award. If they keep this up, this group. The Shannon Award is for somebody who does not please me, and we usually destroy them, and then they run out to the bar, and Jonathan starts telling them not to feel bad, that Oscar's crazy, and don't let it bother you. And the woman's name, who was the last winner, and about whom the award is named, was Shannon from Los Angeles. Is she here tonight? Oh boy, she's never come back to, not only to the restaurant, but she hasn't even come back to Nevada. I mean, and still suffering from some mental disease as a result of having this trophy named after her. Well, what's Jonathan? What are you doing, Jonathan? You want him to hurry? Enough of Shannon? Well, you're the guy who said Shannon. Boy, oh boy, they just got, of course, he signs my paycheck. I'm supposed to pay him fealty. It's a ridiculous relationship. So this little Bantam rooster, who's a woman, if that's conceivable, I don't know. She asked for a sidebar, because each one of these members of the Scarfo crime family would say to her, paying her back, because every time she went past the defendants who were sitting at the defense table, she would call them mafia members. They took issue with that, and she promised the jury, which was, by the way, the first anonymous jury, and as well as not having them state where they live, because everyone was scared to death to sit as a juror. What's happening over there? Who's talking? These guys right here. It's always the same table. Do you always sit at the same table? Would you please give Courtney your name, so you'll think we're comping you, but we'll comp you to Circa, okay? Oh, you bums, you. All right, so they would say to her, you're this, you're that, and they would call her names, and she would say, I'm going to put all these defendants into prison, and I'm going to be doing away with the mafia in Philadelphia. And with that, 5 no-neck monsters stood up in the back of the courtroom and walked out, who all looked like they were part of Goodfellas. So that argument went right down the tubes. And she said, Judge, I want a sidebar. She was a whiner. I want sidebars when lawyers don't want anybody to hear what they're saying, particularly the judge, because this judge, Judge Sabo, he was a real dog, this guy. He sent more people to the electric chair back there than any other judge in Pennsylvania history. And he would sit there playing solitaire while we're trying our hearts out. And he wasn't much better with Christie than he was with the defense attorney. And she said just loud enough, and we were really getting hurt in that case. It looked like we were going to lose the case, and they had one witness after another, another, and I was getting a little nervous that we weren't getting the best of it. And she said, I want a sidebar. And she went up and she whined to Judge Sabo, you know, you kick me one more time, you're fired. Boy, oh boy. She said, you know, every time I pass these guys, Judge, they call me names, and I'm sick and tired of it. So one of the lawyers in the case, Steve Lachine, a very bright guy, he says to her, and the jury is like this because they're not supposed to hear. They're bent over. They're trying to listen to what he says. He says, you better go back to the kitchen. The jurors went, I mean, what's worse than telling somebody who's of that nature had to go back to the kitchen? You don't usually say that to a man, but you say it to a woman. Is that true or not? No more. Okay, and with that, this genius Christie says, well, I don't even cook. Well, when the jury heard that, the tables turned around, and they hated her. They hated her and the cops that used to walk around with her, and they returned a verdict of not guilty, which was wonderful. I was so happy. I was so happy that 7 people who participated in an attempt 14 times to kill one person were all found not guilty. It's almost like living in Nevada in the Spillaggio days. But here they don't even charge him. They just talk to the news media about poor Tony and just tell everybody that he killed 27 people. And the FBI called me the Prince of Darkness. And I said, well, you're not apparently not doing your job. You're supposed to be putting people who supposedly killed people. And Tony never spent a day in jail. So that was the end of that FBI agent. They finally sent him to the state of Washington to pick apples, which I guess are worse ways of living. So that's the second story, or is it the third story? I'm losing track of my stories. And I think Jonathan wants me to hurry even some more. But there was a guy who, I'll tell you a quick Richard Gordon story. And I asked Barry Shear, where are you, Barry? Barry Shear, who used to be Steve Wynn's right-hand man, a very good guy. Not Steve. Steve's no bargain, but Barry's a very good guy. Barry is joining us tonight, which is a wonderful thing. And we have a United States Congresswoman here tonight, and that's Susie Lee. Let's give her a big hand. And other than Eric Goodman, do we have any other elected officials that shouldn't be here? Okay, well, Susie, enjoy yourself. Susie and Carolyn know each other from way back in the Meadow School days, if I'm not mistaken. Susie has always been a good friend of our families, and we think she's a lovely young lady. I don't know why anybody, I'm not allowed to talk about Washington, but I don't know why anybody would want to be back in Washington now. You don't even know what the rules are anymore. Guy's been in office for a week, and they're saying that the rules he made are not rules. I can't figure it out, but he'll straighten us out. We'll all make money with Bitcoin. How many people have invested in Bitcoin? I want to see how good my investment is. 1, 2, 3. Uh-oh, my investment stinks. 4, 5, 6. Oh, I'm glad I had so much. Oh, that's even better. I'm very happy because now I have confidence in Bitcoin again. it's going up today, which is a good thing because I like to help people out, and the money that I help them out with are my profits in Bitcoin. But it's like riding a roller coaster. You never want to sell because it may go up the next day or may go down the next day. It's a trip that you really don't want to make. So I'm glad that some folks here. We had a very good day. Those who rose their hand yesterday. I think I lost $80,000, and today I made $74,000. And you never see it. No one ever sells it, but it's good. And now my wife is a degenerate Bitcoin follower. She wakes up in the morning. She wakes me up. Well, she wakes me up twice. She wakes me up 3 times. I get woken up at 2:44 every night because we have a train that goes by our home. And the train has a whistle, and it blows, and it's not a train, it's just train. And she says, train's out there, and wakes me up. And that's one time. Shortly after that, she always wakes me up, and she has a question to ask. And the question is usually inane, which means that not smart. And she I mean, they're stupid questions that she asks me at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I mean, really dumb questions like, who did Barry Shear work for when he was with Steve Wynn? Well, not Elaine, that's for damn sure. And I have to think with my giant brain cells, and I say, Steve Wynn, and I try to go back to sleep. I can't go back to sleep because she woke up my brain cells, but she goes right back to sleep. And it's a very tough way of living with somebody. When you're woken up by your wife, she asks you a question, you can't go back to sleep. And the third way, I don't know. How else do you aggravate me, sweetheart? Well, I know who's not getting dinner tomorrow night. So tell the chef to load up, Johnny. You're not getting the second half of my steak tonight. It's amazing how a guy... What? Oh, go back to... See, that's why she's here tonight. She says I wander in what I'm saying. But I think my stories are better when I'm wandering. So we have that. Oh, Richard Gordon. We got to go back to Richard. Now, I thought that... How many knew Izzy Marion? Well, Izzy Marion had been married to Connie Francis. He was a hairdresser in town. Izzy, I think, was the dumbest person I've ever met. He was indicted for perjury. They changed the perjury statute. In the old days, you had to have 2 witnesses to say that somebody lied, and it was under oath, whereas the federal government passed a new statute saying that if there are 2 times that somebody makes a false statement to a government agent, then that's allegedly perjury. And Izzy had a gun sent to his home here in Las Vegas from back in Buffalo, where his family was from. And the authorities went to Izzy, and they said, why did you want the gun? Well, no one in the world knew what was in Izzy's head. Izzy said to him, oh, I just wanted it for protection. Well, that didn't satisfy him. They went back to him again, and they said, Izzy, tell us why you really want the gun. He said, well, I just felt that the neighborhood had to be protected. Well, before he was through, he made about 5 different stories, and Izzy was finally indicted back in New York, and we went back there, and my character witness back there was Joe Louis. Has anybody ever met Joe Louis? Well, Joe Louis, he was an American hero. I mean, the Brown Bomber, are you allowed to say that? I'm scared to call him the Brown Bomber. The Brown Bomber was maybe the greatest champ of all time, along with Marciano. And the Brown Bomber was a character witness for Izzy, and we called him in, and I went over the questions with him. The first question was, we were up in the Mark Hotel in New York City getting ready for the next day in court, and I said, please state your name. I wanted to go over, the hard part of the questioning. And he said, I said, Mr. Lewis, I just asked you, please state your name. I said, this will not do. And his wife, Martha, who I think was a judge from Detroit, very intelligent young lady, I said, Mrs. Lewis, I think we're going to have to use you instead of Joe to tell us what his name is. And I said, Mrs. Lewis, could you please tell us your husband's name? And she said, Joe Louis Barrow. I said, thank you very much. And I went on to say, Mrs. You go by the name Lewis, of course. She said, yes, I do. I said, did you know Mr. Marion? She said, absolutely not. I said, well, I'm through with you then. Please get out of my room. And I asked Joe Louis to go into the courtroom, and there was a prosecutor in there who was a nasty guy. Izzy had his child, a nice little girl from Las Vegas, back there, and this guy would always go up to her, this prosecutor, and say, I'm going to bury your father. I'm going to make sure that I do an Indian war dance with your father's grave. And I hated this guy. It just turns out that the guy, when the case was over with, he called me and asked me for a job. I said, you'll get a job. Forget about it. His name was, did you know Carl Bornstein, Judge? No, he's a complete fraud. But the judge in New York in district court, the same position that Judge Slomsky held, said, is that who I think he is? And I said, who do you think he is? He says, you know who I think he is. I said, who do you think he is, Judge? He says, is it really? I said, yes, it is. And he says, is that really Joe Louis? I said, his wife says it is. I've been trying to get him to say it for days, but for some reason, he doesn't know what his name is. And but he says, don't worry about how this case ends up, Mr. Goodman. If I could have his autograph at the end of the case, your client has nothing to worry about because he's a friend of the guy who doesn't know his last name. So, so the case is winding up, and then I knew he was in trouble. Izzy's daughter comes running into the room, and she says, Izzy, Dad, guess what? And I can't wait to hear what she has to say. He says, what? And she says, Joe Louis ate the fish for lunch. I said, well, that's not a bad idea. It's Friday. He probably doesn't eat meat on Friday. She says, I don't know about that, Dad, but it was bones and all. I said, okay, well, we got the right Joe Louis anyhow. And Joe Louis got my client, Izzy, who was Connie Francis's husband, as I say, to walk home a free man. Now, I'm getting close to the end because I want to get your questions, but there was a remarkable human being by the name of Dave Takeda, who was with the DEA. And those who don't know what the DEA is probably have never smuggled drugs in their life. The DEA is a Drug Enforcement Association, agency, pardon me, and Dave Takeda was the DEA representative out of, I still call it the Las Vegas International Airport because I really don't like Harry Reid. I refuse. My wife says I'm not allowed to say certain things, but I really want to find out because they told us all that somebody was going to pay $8 million to have everything changed out of the airport, and I think Klubeck, who's another jerk, and who owned a timeshare program, Klubeck paid a little bit of money. I don't think anybody else came up with a cent in order to change everything at Karen. And a lie was told us, and I couldn't stand it. Susie, you never lie, do you? Never. And it really bothered me that the public was scammed there. Same thing with the stupid, what's that thing called that goes up in the air over town? No, zip line. What? Oh, you stop it, please. The monorail. That's Betsy, that's a second biggest scam in the history of the world. They said it's not going to cost the taxpayer any money, and it's coming from this, coming from that. The taxpayers paying for the whole thing probably a dozen times over, but that's the way they do things in this town. They tell you something's going to happen, you wait for it to happen, you figure it's not going to be on your dime, and it never happens. So I'm out at the airport, and I see this fella, and I say, geez, That's Dave Takeda. Takeda was unbelievable. He was from Japanese descent, and he and O'Brien, who was with the State Bureau of Investigation, which nobody ever heard of. I'm not sure they exist, but when he got on the witness stand, he said he's with the State Bureau of Investigation. I never heard of it. And the two of them were at the airport, and Takeda had an uncanny sense of arresting people out there when... Remind me to tell you about Richard Gordon, will you please? Please. Had an uncanny sense that every arrest he made, every person he stopped, and he stopped a lot of people out there, the search turned up drugs. I said, this guy is unbelievable. It's like he's magical or mystical or something. And I was going down with Carolyn to Puerto Vallarta, and I had an old client by the name of Ken Flannery move down there, and he was a veteran, a nice guy. He had a great life, smoked a cigar. He had the Mexican Navy. Actually, remember the old days when you had the big outdoor type, not DirecTV, because they're like midgets. Now I'm using a word that you're not supposed to use after, but I can't call this a little person. It was like a big round disc that you had that you were able to get all the ball games on, and even a couple of dirty movies if your wife wasn't home. And but we don't know anything about that, do we, Eric? Oh boy! And it was just amazing. We're going through the airport, and Ken had called me, and he said, you could do me a giant favor. Number one, come over to my home. And he lived on a street called Izzy Street, which is pretty cool. And he says, come on over. But Pat, who was his girlfriend and sort of live-in girlfriend, said, could you bring me this perfume? It was called Opium. So, yeah. It was, I don't know who manufactured it, but it was very expensive, supposedly, and had a unique odor or aroma. And I said, I'm sure Carolyn knows all about it, so I'll ask her to get me some of this opium, and certainly I had no problem bringing it down. So I go to tell Ken on the payphone at the airport that we're about to head down there, and I couldn't figure this one out. He says, Mr. Goodman, I said, Dave, how are you doing? He's one of the few guys I talked to who was with one of these alphabet agencies. He says, step over to the side here, will you? I looked around, I said, who are you talking to? He says, I'm talking to you. I said, well, how about if I don't want to talk to you? And he said, well, I don't care whether you want to talk to me or not. I'm going to talk to you, and I'm going to open your bag. I said, and you're going to do what? I said, do you have a warrant? He said, I heard the conversation. What he had done, there's a technique where the government uses a machine able to tell what phone numbers are called to or fro, but can't listen to the conversation. It's a pen register, it's called. Well, he converted his pen register into a wiretap device where he was not only able to overhear conversations emanating from the airport, but also record them at the same time. And he picked up my conversation with my friend Flannery down in Puerto Rico, and he said, are you going to come nicely, or do we have to place you under arrest? I said, what for? He says, the transportation of controlled substances. Are you kidding? He says, are you going to come nicely? I'm not coming nicely. I said, if you want to arrest me, you can do that. He said, well, step over here, and he starts going through my bag. And he sees in the bag a bag of opium, perfume, and he thought that he had a major drug dealer, the mob's lawyer. He was going to put an end to all crime, and it turns out it's Carolyn's opium that she got for Pat Flannery. And from that point on, I used to laugh when I would see him until he got indicted for an illegal wiretap, which was a wonderful thing because he continued that practice for years until he finally gave it up. So that's another story. And then the last one, what? Gordon. Now, we have a lot of people that I've talked about who are dumber than most of you. Not dumber than all of you. But this guy would get are there men named Shannon? I think there are. Oh, everybody's saying, hurry up. We want our steak. Get off the stand. This is unbelievable. Richard Gordon, who Barry and myself talked about tonight. Richard Gordon had a exquisite deluxe car business when he came to town, and he actually gave me a 1964 Silver Cloud Rolls Royce because he wanted his lawyer to drive around like a big shot. And I love that car. I drove it every place, and sorry, he had these. Thanks. Trying to poison me again. Thank you. So, had the driver's wheel at the left-hand side, like it was American, and it was a great car. But unfortunately, the car, the windshield wiper didn't work, so he asked me to give it back to him, which I gladly did because he couldn't get a windshield wiper for it. But he also took over what became Southern Wine, which Larry Ruvo, who has been so good to this group here, and so good to the town with the Ruvo Brain Institute, and Richard were working together. That's a very masculine voice. We're working together, and now have the biggest whiskey distributorship, I guess, maybe in the history of the world. But Richard was the dumbest human being who ever lived. I get a package at home, and Takeda, I'm surprised Takeda wasn't with the mailman at the time that they came to the door, but he was with an FBI agent. And I said, well, what do you fellas want here? Because you're not welcome. Because I did not like the FBI. I still don't like the FBI. I don't like anybody associated with the federal government except Susie Lee. And he said, did you get a package today? So I lied. This is a little lie I'm talking about, sweetheart. I lied to him, and I said, no, I got no package. And they went away, and they seemed a little disappointed because they probably rummaged through the package before they came to my home to ask me whether I got it. And I went and opened up a package. And, of course, contained in a plain folder was a white powdery substance. Now, I had represented enough people over the years who used that up their nose. And I called up Richard. I said, are you out of your effing mind? You sent me a package of cocaine through the mail when you know the heat that I have representing the purported mob here? He said, well, I didn't know what to do with it. I said, Richard, how about the effing toilet? He said, oh. So he gets the Shannon Award for being the dumbest human being who ever lived. That's it.
Oscar Goodman, ladies and gentlemen. Very nice. And I did not know we would be talking about Bitcoin tonight, so this from Oscar's Dinner Series, there's no investment advice, disclaimer. We don't know what he's talking about with that. Before we do the Q&A, I do want to recognize Congresswoman Susie Lee. Thank you for being here, Susie. Appreciate you. My lovely wife is here tonight, Emily Jossel. Thank you for being here tonight. And of course, the Oscars team, Nico. Nico, take a bow. Everyone, Nico, Courtney, Chef Ben in the back. This is no easy feat to put together this dinner and get the food out the way they do. They're an amazing team. Thank you to the team that puts this on. You guys do an amazing job. Nick, you've been here all the way. Thank you. Appreciate you guys. So with that, we will now turn it over to all of you. If anyone has a question, put your hand up. Casey, thanks for being here. Any questions? Okay, we got a question. Yes, please.
I'd like Oscar to tell us how he met Carolyn, how they decided to come to Vegas, and how it became known as the mob.
Well, that could be a long night. But the question is, how did you meet Carolyn? How did you come to Vegas? And how did you become a mob attorney? And I mean, within a few minutes, if you could.
I only know the answer to one of those three parts. I became a mob attorney as a result of representing who was a purported mobster. That was a dumb... Did you ask that dumb question? I went to a small Quaker school, even though I'm Jewish, and Carolyn went to a school where she didn't know she was Jewish, and she had, you're not allowed to say this either, but her first roommate was an African-American young lady. It was an all-girls school, and Carolyn and the young lady sort of made a deal with one another, that the young lady said that she would find Carolyn a nice Jewish boy, and Carolyn had no idea because her parents were absolutely, what did they call themselves? Not what I called them. I'm not going to use that kind of language here. Well, they were ethical culturists. Oh, boy. Okay. Well, it is true. Don't ask what an ethical culture is. No, how did I meet Carolyn?
Okay, yeah, how did you meet Carolyn?
So I saw, oh boy, I can't. So there was only one nice-looking girl who went to Bryn Mawr, where Carolyn went, because Carolyn was very, very smart, and I even did a painting, because I used to paint when I was younger, and I had three, my favorite painting, I haven't thought of this in years, my favorite painting was three little piggies went to market, and the rest went to Bryn Mawr. So, what was the third question?
How did you become the mob attorney?
Well, I became the mob. Then I want that story. It's such a long story. Next time, I'll tell you real fast. I'd be happy to. You are coming next time, right? Yeah. Do you want to pay in advance? So you don't change your mind? Okay. I became a mob attorney completely by accident. I had no idea what the mob was. I came from a very legitimate family. My dad was an assistant district attorney in Philadelphia, raised to respect law enforcement, and then came out here having been assigned a matter by Arlen Specter, for whom I worked, that was in the DA's office in Philadelphia while I was going to law school as a clerk, and I was working on a murder case with a wealthy widow who was killed in Philadelphia, and the fellows who killed her took $300,000 from her under her mattress and came out to Las Vegas to launder it in the old traditional sense of laundering it at the crap tables. And the two police officers at Arlen assigned me to work up the testimony, said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Where else there?" And that's how I became familiar with Las Vegas. And I went home that night and I said to Carolyn, I said, I went out with these two police officers preparing their testimony for trial, and they're telling me about Las Vegas. And I said, "How would you like to go to the land of milk and honey?" And she says, "I love you, Oscar, but I am not going to Israel." Then I knew she was Jewish. No one knows it.
Thank you. All right, any other questions tonight? Yes.
So, appreciate all the service from the Goodmans. Been leading the city for 25 years. Have you been able to unplug, and what do you miss the most since the family isn't leading the city?
I mean, it might be a question for the former mayor, not the former mayor, but the question is, thank you for your service, and what do you miss the most about leading the city of Las Vegas?
Having to stay at home with every free moment that I have. No. I love my husband. And it was so exciting and diverse, everything that we did at the city during Oscar's visionary time of those 12 years, and seeing how many people that live and love this great, unusual community. Make it work every day and hope it continues.
And I would add this, because I haven't seen her in a long time, and she, as I said, she's the biggest boozer I ever met. My city man. What?
Booster or boozer?
Oh, she was definitely not a booster. And she's not a rooster. She's a boozer. And that's Betsy Fretwell. Betsy and myself went through, people forget the hard times, don't they, Betsy? There were plenty of hard times, but I didn't care what people thought. I swear to God, on my life, I could care less. I don't like people. I really dislike people. I really don't like going out. I can't stand people. But Betsy made some pretty tough decisions, and we had the guts to stay by those decisions, and we averted a lot of problems over the years because of her guidance with me, and then Carolyn kept going and sort of followed the same pattern, and Carolyn was a good mayor. Carolyn actually worked. As Betsy will tell you, she used to cringe. I used to give a press conference every week, and Betsy knew that whatever's going to come out of this mouth was going to be disastrous. And there was one, he called himself a pundit. I call himself a piece of crap. And that's John Ralston, who is the biggest phony who ever lived. And, if he wants to sue me, I don't think he'll put his reputation on the line, but that's besides the point. But Betsy was able to avert the severe decree by doing the right thing all the time. And the two of us, I think, got us through some pretty tough times here that nobody ever thinks about. They only think about the good times and the Mob Museum, the Smith Center, and all the things that happened over at Symphony Park, and a downtown that 2 days ago or 3 days ago, the President of the United States elect actually chose this area over every place else in this community with a glorified strip, and came right down here to the Fremont Street and the Circa, and had Jonathan by his side. And what's that? Oh.
I think the answer to your question was he misses Betsy. That's what I took away from that.
Inappropriate story he can tell us.
Say it again.
What is the most inappropriate story he can tell us?
What is the most inappropriate story you can tell us? The mayor says she doesn't want to hear this. No? Keep it clean.
Well, it's not clean. When I was about 16 years old, I hitchhiked across the country and ended up in a crib in Tijuana.
Yes. Okay, I'll come to you. Yeah. Oscar, what was your favorite moment of being the mayor?
That's a great question. For some reason, I can't understand it. The FBI and the DEA and the IRS, they didn't like me. I'm a sort of likable guy, and Every place I went, people say, weren't you ever scared of getting hurt? And I said, no, I have more federal agents following me than any other human being who ever lived, and listening to my conversations, and I felt very secure. And what was the question?
Favorite moment as mayor?
What?
Favorite moment as mayor?
Oh, as the mayor, I had nothing to worry about. As a matter of fact, this is the truth. A lot of what you heard tonight is also the truth. But I was asked by the United States Conference of Mayors, of which I was a member of the advisory committee, and this was of great pride to me, of lecturing at Harvard to incoming mayors as to how not to be indicted. Because of officials, the most indicted elected official is a mayor. I mean, it ranges from molesting little children, which I have no interest in. Big children may be a different story one stage of my life, but little children, a lot of bad things that mayors have done. Poor Kwame. Anyone from Detroit? Is Kwame ever getting out of prison? You know, if his name wasn't Kwame, he'd be out of prison. I'm absolutely convinced of that. I wish it were Klubeck. No, the nicest part is I was able to talk to people, make them smile, have a good time. The showgirls were wonderful. I mean, they really were. They took care of me wherever we went, and we had a great time selling in the city of Las Vegas, and all the gin that I drank, and I drank plenty of it. I was so smart because nobody else did this who was an elected official. The elected officials love to go on trips, and they always put it on. I read in the paper. They got tabs for trips. It was in the paper just the last day. Not that I like it. I hate the paper. Cats, I hate the RJ. But there was an article because they're like rats. They are like informants. They are no good. The paper had the monies that were spent by elected officials on trips that they took. Obviously, they took them because they thought they were doing something. And I have no idea what I'm talking about.
We'll do a couple more questions. Vegas, Paulie C, I'm very disappointed. No questions over there, but over here, you want the mic? You want to do it yourself?
Do you have any experiences with Jerry Tarkanian?
Any experiences with Jerry Tarkanian? This is a pause I've never seen before.
Because the Tark was a great guy. Tark the Shark was a great guy, great coach. But for some reason, I can't get this out. I'm trying to get it out. For some reason, he had meetings in my law office with Richie the Fixer Prairie. That's it.
One over there. If you could go back 60 years and give your younger self, to be a younger self, to give yourself today a piece of advice, what would that be?
To work harder and become the second baseman for the Philadelphia Phillies.
Okay. What is the favorite case you ever defended?
Oh, you know, it's funny when you do the kind of work that I did, where your clients are vilified and the charges are, in many cases, heinous. You develop a relationship because you realize that the person who's being charged, another citizen, is relying on you to make sure that you make the prosecution, the government, do its job properly, to follow the United States Constitution, and to make sure that those responsible for enforcing the law are not engaged in misconduct. So you become very close to all of your clients. That doesn't mean to say you go out to dinner with them. The only time really I ever went out to eat with a client is when we were celebrating a victory, or we were out of town and they weren't in jail, and we go out and get a bite to eat before we hit the sack. But I liked all my clients. They all treated me with respect. They treated Carolyn with respect. They treated my children with respect. So there's not one that's more of a favorite than another, but I'm so lucky that I had the opportunity to represent these ladies and gentlemen because as a result of my representation, I participated in the first wiretap case in the United States history that was mandated by the Omnibus Crime Bill, making wiretapping legal and making sure that the government followed the rules there. The first RICO case, racketeer influence, corrupt organization in the United States. And it wasn't me, it was my clients who were having these problems, and I had the privilege of taking on the government and making sure that they were doing their job right. Represented the first person charged with the assassination of a federal judge in the last century, and represented a federal judge before the United States Senate. I saw that Capitol building, and I was in that building, and to that time, and Susie, I don't know whether you can verify this, I heard from the people that I was the first non-elected official, the first citizen, so to speak, to be on the floor of the United States Senate representing Judge Claiborne. So I handled all these cases and tried to do it, bringing credit to myself and my wife and my family and the state of Nevada. So no other lawyer in the world had the opportunity to do that. And then ultimately, I got the phone call to play myself in the movie Casino. And I love that experience. I love Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro and Sharon Stone. I love being with Scorsese and Rickles and the whole works. And no other lawyer ever had any of these experiences because of where he was and what he was and the time that he was there. So I've had the best of it. I ask for nothing more because God's been good to me. But most of all, he's given me a family that I'm proud of. Every one of my children. They've all acquitted themselves beautifully. The only one I had a problem with is sitting here eating. And but he straightened himself out. It's amazing what reform school can do. No, it really is.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining us. The dinner will be coming out shortly. Thank you for joining us at Oscars Dinner Series. We'll be back again in a couple of weeks. Thank you, everyone. And if you want to get on the list for the next dinner series, Courtney will come around and she'll introduce herself to those that don't know Courtney yet. She's the housekeeper of the dinner series. Thank you, everyone, and enjoy dinner.
You a fan of On the Corner of Main Street? You're listening, so we'll assume that's a yes. So share the love, rate, review, and tell a friend to subscribe. Also, follow us on Twitter and Instagram @PlazaPod, on Facebook, Plaza Podcast, and feel free to write to the man himself @Jonathan Jossel. We'll see you next time, right here on the corner of Main Street.